Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto explaining, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Blue Vortex discussion. Today, I want to talk to you guys about this important development that we had in the last manga chapter, which is the attack on the Sand Village by Matsuri and potentially more Shinju, which directly resulted in Gaara's defeat and Shinki being turned into a tree and his chakra being used for the birth of a brand new awakened Shinju who goes by the name of Ryu. As we saw at the end of the last chapter, this was the cliffhanger we were left on, where we saw Shikamaru being given the status update and he got the information while Sarada and class rep were there and Boruto had gone out to retreat, likely to meet up with Kakashi and Koji. That's why in today's newest Naruto Explained video, we're going to be taking a look at why you should be excited about this likely change of scenery going into the Sand Village and the Land of Wind, and why the team that is assembled to go support the Sand Village is going to be more important than you think, and which Shinobi I believe make the most sense when it comes to the makeup of the team. So jumping right into it, I think we all pretty much can expect for Konoha to send out some Shinobi to the Sand Village, which even though it's a 3-day journey and they aren't seemingly under attack right now, they do however need reinforcements before they go back on the offensive, and I want to start there. Konoha has been dealing with the Claw Grimes longer, and more importantly, they've been dealing with Code in terms of the problem for much longer than the other villages, and it's important to take note of that detail before we go into any potential teams that are assembled to be sent out to deal with hunting down any of the Claw Grimes in the area and potentially any of the Shinju that might pop up. I've noticed in the comment section that there are people who are asking, how did the Claw Grimes and Matsuri even pull up in the Sand Village this easily without being noticed? And I think it's worth noting, bringing up the fact that this very thing was set up in Boruto Naruto Next Generations, and this appears to be a clear example of what longtime viewers have heard me say in reviews and discussions, which is you have the concept of Chekhov's guns and delayed payoff, and here's why Boruto Part 1 set both of these up. And it's a great example of what I've been preaching here on the channel for the last 3 years, which is with monthly manga, you can't treat it like weekly manga series or completed anime, where you binge watch it and you go all the way through, or the answers are given to you right off the top. With monthly and quarterly manga, the payoff is going to take longer due to the release format. So in chapter 60 of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, we were ironically told by Shikamaru and Ibiki that Code had placed claw marks outside of the other 4 villages on top of placing them outside of the Hidden Leaf Village. In chapter 14 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, who were the 2 characters who were the most prominent in the chapter when we learned that the Sand Village had gotten attacked at the end of said chapter? None other than Shikamaru and Ibiki. This was intentional, and I will explain to you why by pointing out some of the breadcrumbs that we've had in the story that have been leading up to this moment. After Code placed those markers around the other villages, we then saw another 12 chapters later that the Claw Grimes that Code had created were instinctually aware of where the other markers were, with the first one being shown after it was formed, looking at the markers on one of the Claw Grimes closest nearby and running directly through it. When this was done, this was before Code placed his hand over the eye to take control and manifest his own eye outside of the claw mark of the Shinju that went through that marker. We jump ahead to chapter 13 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, and what did Kakashi and Koji tell us? He said that Jura would be building an army of awakened Shinju with large numbers, meaning there were more coming other than the 4 we were introduced to. In chapter 1 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, we were also told that Code had once again been active with his claw marks because they had Kawaki flying around the village perimeter, shrinking the claw marks. They were being freshly planted because the Jonin who were there made it a point to say that Code has come close to the village frequently and always retreated. The last time that Code had taken this type of approach tactic, Konoha was focused on the markers they placed outside the village, and the whole time he'd been placing them around the other villages too, dividing attention. It took us 34 chapters and 38 months of real time to get us to this point. Since, reminder, Boruto's manga took a 1-month break when Ikimoto helped work on the Himawari Academy arc, and there was a 3-month break between the end of Boruto Part 1 and Boruto Part 2, which goes back to me saying back in 2021, hey, this Code Assault arc is going to be the Boruto version of the Search of Tsunade arc. It's going to be slow paced, but there are seeds being planted for future conflict for the next few arcs, so strap in and get used to it, and this was one of them that just got paid off. We've seen the Claw Grimes have been aware of where the markers were instinctually. because they're made up of Code's chakra. They're made up of the Ten Tails chakra, and they contain Code's blood, so they can move through his markers. And what's the one thing that we've seen have been able to take care of Code's claw marks? It's not the Karma Seal. Karma can't absorb them. It's Kawaki's Kokugan Eye, using the Sukuna Hikona ability to shrink non-living objects, including chakra itself. Which brings me to who I think is going to make up this team that goes to the Sand Village. And I'm going to start with the most unpopular option. I think by default, most of us, we do expect Sarada to be there because she is literally in the office with Shikamaru as he's getting that report. But I think as much as people don't want to hear this, Kawaki has to be considered for this team for two big reasons. The first is obviously you're going to need someone to shrink those claw marks, which gives a good excuse to get Kawaki outside the village. The other thing that this does, if we assume that Sarada's on this team, which I think we all assume that, it allows for instant conflict for storytelling because there's no love lost between these two characters. We've seen them openly butt heads, with Sarada getting right in his face and challenging him and not backing down, and even spending the last 3 years doing her best to expose him. Kawaki knows that Sarada knows the truth. That's a very good source of conflict, especially with Kawaki likely being highly annoyed that Boruto has escaped Konoha. As a writer, that's something you can work with in the storytelling very easily. It gives you several avenues to explore conflict. So that's going to be 2 of the 4 members for the Tsunagakure rescue team, Sarada and Kawaki. While I think it's possible that you have class rep there, likely under the excuse that they're going to need someone to do whatever maintenance might be required on Kawaki's body, since even though Omnipotence has switched the memories of everyone that they had of Boruto and Kawaki, as we got told in chapter 1, nobody has batted an eye to the fact that Kawaki's a cyborg. They just accept it. So by extension, there's zero chance that someone goes, hey, why does class rep need to be there to give Kawaki an oil change on his body if the mission goes on too long? Which is going to add some more payoff to her working underneath the motto this whole time, because she was already shown learning every inch of Kawaki's body under Katasuke, and she was there when Amato did the repairs on his ninja tech. So there's an argument for her to be there, and given that she is also someone who has spoken out about omnipotence, it's one of those things where you get more conflict. And if Sarada oversteps her bounds, class rep can be the one that pulls her in. I don't think you get Misugi on this team for the following 2 reasons. We don't really need to see him in a battle setting because we saw where he stacked up when he fought against base Boruto 7 chapters ago. There's enough shown there to get a rough idea of where Sage Mode Misugi scales. Even though Boruto's holding back, there's enough there when you read between the lines of what's shown, because Boruto, while it doesn't spoon feed you info and you have to read between the lines, there's enough breadcrumbs there to get a very realistic idea of where Misugi stacks up. The other reason is that Team 7's mission to guard Ada and Damon, it is still in effect. I don't see Konoha letting those siblings out of the village unless it's the entire Team 7 accompanying them, and that's very ballsy to do that. So someone has to stay behind in order to guard Ada and Damon. Again, assuming that they don't just let them all out, which I highly doubt. Now, Misugi, he just feels like the odd man out here, just because we haven't seen enough action-wise from Sarada and Kawaki. Sarada, yes, she fought against the Claw Grimes and she landed a couple of really good hits on Hidari, underrated hits. And Kawaki, he's been getting put to sleep every other chapter, so it's only right that they're sent there because number 1, you get instant conflict with the character interactions, and most importantly, number 2, you get the scaling information you need to directly cement where these 2 characters are going to be ranking at. Obviously, this assumes that the Team 7 is only confined to the village rule is going to be bent, but I think the story stands a good chance of bending that rule, especially given the issue that Shikamaru finds himself into in terms of trouble, so it's possible that that rule gets bent. Imagine if you're Kankuro and you're asking for help and Konoha sends you Konohamaru, Udon, and Nishi as a part of a team. That in itself is grounds to break the treaty and start a war, because you might as well take it that Konoha wants your village to be wiped off the map. This would be another good sign of just good faith and effort here. Now, that brings me to the last person who I think makes the most sense to round out this 4-man team. Assuming it's class rep and Sarada and Kawaki, you're going to need a Jonin to lead the team, and while Konohamaru does make sense, I'd say if you really want to lean onto character interactions, then it makes the most sense for Temari to lead this team. So allow me to explain what I mean. So Temari is the wife of the current Hokage, Shikamaru. And she's from that Kazekage clan in the Sand Village, so she's royalty there. But she also is both a current Konoha Shinobi and a former Sand Village Shinobi, one of the elites on the Sand Village, which means that she knows the jutsu formula code to get past their barrier, and she knows the Land of Wind better than any shinobi in Konoha that could be sent. She just makes the most sense. You also have the fact that it's her younger brother that is there in the village who's incapacitated. Actually, it's both of her younger brothers. Konkuro's calling the shots right now and Gaara's on sleepy time. It just makes sense to send her there. While Temari right now is 40 years old, so she isn't necessarily in her prime, she also isn't in that area like the third Hokage where stamina was an issue at age 69, which, as a reminder, Temari's 20 going on 21 years old in the 4th Ninja War. I know there's a tendency to lump Temari and Shikamaru as being the same age together because they ended up together, but she's older than all the members of the Rookie 9, she's older than the members of Team Guy, and she's one of the oldest members of Naruto's generation. She's closer to Itachi's age than she was to Shikamaru, and that's something that people tend to forget. So I think that alone just makes the most sense to have her sent there to lead that team, and it allows for a change of pace and a subversion of expectations, because so many of us would expect Konohamaru to be leading this team, especially given the whole Matsuri connection. Either one is fine. Either one works as an effective payoff. I just think from a storytelling perspective, you get a larger payoff if you have Temari be the one that goes there, just because of the character interactions and how she can be used to build on the world building that we have. Because as a reminder, we didn't spend a long time in the Sand Village or the Land of Wind in Naruto's manga. The anime actually showed you more scenes in the Sand Village than we had in the manga. Temari being there to give a different perspective, it could do wonders in that regard. I've never really been of this whole mindset that we need to go explore the other villages in Boruto's manga and that it's too Land of Fire centric, largely because I came up with Naruto's manga, and prior to the war, Naruto's story took place 90% inside the Land of Fire. Yeah, you had the Kazekage arc with a few chapters in the Sand Village and a few chapters in the Land of Rivers where the Akatsuki were sealing Gaara away. You had the short time in the Grass Village during the Tenchi Bridge arc and the 5 Kage Summit in the Land of Iron, and less than a handful of chapters in the Land of Lightning with Sasuke fighting Killer Bee. Prior to the war arc, it was mostly in the Land of Fire, since the majority of the war arc takes place in the Land of Lightning and those surrounding territories. I was always fine with it being a Land of Fire based story in Boruto, outside of us getting the occasional trip to the Land of Snow where Boro's hideout was and the battles in other dimensions. But Boruto 2 Blue Vortex has slowly opened the door for exploring more right now, via Boruto being in the Land of Wind hiding out, Matsuri attacking the Sand Village, and now it's seeming like a team is being sent to the Sand Village. It's a nice change of pace, even though I don't think it lasts for a terribly long time. Maybe an arc, depending on how long this next arc is going to be. But the makeup of that team is going to be very important for the storytelling, in my opinion. Almost as important as it is to understand all the signs that Natsu and Lucy are in love, which this video on the left goes into extensive detail covering undeniable proof they are the end game. And over here on the right, we got the new Boruto chapter review. So check that out if you haven't already. And remember, Shinju DNA is love, Shinju DNA is life.